In the last video, we talked about event delegation and how it can be really useful for when you dynamically add elements to the page. In this video, we're going to be talking about how you can store data locally inside of a user's browser. But first, I need to talk about a few caveats related to this storage. This storage, like I mentioned, is only available in the user's current browser. Right now, we're using Google Chrome as our browser. So if I were to save information to my Google Chrome browser, this is only available in Google Chrome on the device I'm currently on. So on my desktop computer, Google Chrome, I will be able to access that information. But if I were to go, for example, to Firefox on my computer, I don't have access to that information because Firefox is a different browser than Google Chrome, and this information is stored browser specific. Also, if I were to open up Google Chrome on my phone, for example, I'm actually not going to see the data that I saved to Google Chrome on my browser, because the browser in my phone is different than the browser on my computer. So it's specific to the browser you use and the device that you use. This is important to note because a lot of people think that this information is stored globally and can be available anywhere, but that is the role of a database, which is completely separate from this browser-related storage. In this browser-related storage, you generally don't want to put things that you need that are super, super important to be there all the time because it's easy for people to clear their browser storage, move to a different device that doesn't have that storage, or move to a different browser. But with all that said, it's still incredibly important to be able to use browser storage. And there's three different types of browser storage. There's cookies, local storage, and session storage. And chances are you've probably heard of cookies before. They're kind of the thing that you hear about all over the web. But in reality, these are by far the least useful version of browser storage. Local storage and session storage are much easier to use and probably going to be the most useful for what you need them for. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between these different types of storage and how you can use them. First of all, I want to talk about the limits that you have on storage for each of these different types. So if we just come in here and we create like a table that has local storage, we have cookies, and we have session storage. So with local storage, you're going to get 10 megabytes of storage for each item inside of local storage. This is plenty of storage space. You're really not going to exceed this. This is huge. And if you exceed this, you probably need to rethink how you're storing information. Next up, we have cookies. In cookies, you can only store 4 kilobytes. This is a very small amount of information, but generally cookies only contain a small amount of information, so this is not something that you're going to run into as an issue. Lastly, we have session storage, which is going to be around 5 megabytes of storage space, which is again quite large and more than you're really going to need for pretty much any of your use cases. And this local storage and session storage amount may be slightly different depending on what browser you use, but these are generally numbers that are going to be across most browsers, so you can kind of trust that these numbers are correct. And like I said, storage limit is really not something you're going to run into when dealing with these different types of storage solutions. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is when the data in these different storage solutions expires, because something that's important to realize is that when you save this data, it will eventually expire. In local storage, that actually is not true. Data will never expire. So that's kind of nice that when you put something in local storage, you can trust that it's always going to be there. Cookies, on the other hand, is a manual expiration. So you manually say when you want the data to expire. Let me just tab this over a little bit. So now inside of session storage, this is going to expire on tab close. What happens is whenever you close the tab you're currently in, all of the data inside of session storage is going to be completely removed, which is kind of where the name session comes in, because each session that you have, which in our case is a tab, you're going to have data specific to that session, and then when you close the tab, the data gets removed. A lot of times, shopping carts are stored inside of session storage, because when you close out of a tab or close your window, you no longer need that shopping cart anymore. So it clears out all of that information that was inside your session storage. So with local storage, it never expires. Cookies, you tell it the exact date you want it to expire, and session storage will just expire whenever you close the tab. Now, kind of the final important thing that's different between these is how you can access this information. Local storage is only available on the client, and by client, I mean the actual user's browser. This data is only available on the user's browser and is not available anywhere else. Cookies are a little bit different because you can view them on the client and the server. And that's because cookies are sent along with every single request you make. Whenever you make a fetch request, whenever you load a new page through like an anchor tag link, it is going to send all of the cookies from your browser over to the server, which is great when you need to do things such as authentication because it is just automatically sent for you. And this is really the only use case for cookies. When you need to send data from the client to the server automatically, cookies are perfect. Now, finally, we have session storage, and session storage, just like local storage, is only available on the client. Really, session storage and local storage are exactly the same, other than the slight differences in their storage limits and the fact that session storage expires earlier when you close the tab, as opposed to local storage, which never expires. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is how easy these are to use. Local storage, incredibly easy to use. It has really great syntax, and it's just great to use. Cookies, much harder to use. The syntax is really confusing, and it is not at all user-friendly. And then finally, session storage. This again is very easy because it's just like local storage. So now that we have this kind of table of information available, let's start looking at how we can implement local storage, session storage, and cookies. And we're going to start with local storage because it's the easiest, it never expires, and it's really straightforward to work with. Let's come down here, and in order to access local storage, it again is on the window object, but we know since it's on the window object, we can just call it like this without the window object, and it's just local, then the capital S for storage, just a normal object, and that's all it is. This is an object, and it has a bunch of methods on it. We can get removal of item, we can set an item, we can get an item, and we can clear it. In our case, we want to set an item. We want to save some data to our local storage. And the way all of these storage methods work, local storage and session storage, is that you give it a key, just like a JavaScript object. In our case, our key is just going to say name. This is the actual key associated with your object, your data. So when you want to get that data back, you need to use this specific key. Then we need to pass it a value, and this value must be a string. It always has to be a string. So in our case, we'll just say Kyle is our name. Now, if we save this, nothing at all really looks like it happened, but what we did is we just saved this value Kyle under the key name inside of local storage. And if we go to our dev tools, we go over to this application tab, this is where we can see all of our storage. As you can see, local storage, and it has for all of our sites that are open. We have session storage and we have cookies. And if we click on local storage, and I just zoom this out a little bit, you'll notice we have a few things in here. I can clear out a few of these. We'll just clear all of them and resave over here. And you'll notice now that we have name and the value is Kyle. So this is great because we actually have our key name, which we set, and the value Kyle. If we just expand this back out a little bit so we can see everything, we can see key, name, value, Kyle, and that's inside of our local storage tab here. If we wanted to do session storage, it's the exact same thing. We'll say session storage dot set item, and we're just going to say here age, and we'll just put the string 25. Now, if I save this and go to session storage, you'll see the age is set to 25. If I just clear out everything else that's in there, you'll see age 25, which is perfect. Now, in order to show you how session storage expires and local storage doesn't, if I just bring over this tab here real quick, you can see we have this tab open. This is tied to our console. And I just delete this session storage and local storage here. And I just open up a brand new tab. And now I inspect this to view our application data for this new tab that we just opened up. You'll notice that our session storage is empty. It doesn't have that age parameter, but our local storage still has our name. And that's because this persists across all of our tabs, while our session data is only available in our individual tab, this tab here. If I inspect this tab and go to our application, you'll see that our age is properly set inside of this specific tab, but it is not available in the other tab because those tabs are different than each other. We just close that extra tab we created and get our code back to what we had. This is how you can set local and session storage. They work exactly the same, it's just that an expiration is slightly different. Now what happens if we wanted to update our name, for example? Well, we can just say local storage dot set item of name, and we give it a new value, Sally. Now, instead of our local storage, our name has been updated to Sally. So setting an item will both create it and update it depending on if the item is already existing. So this first time we called it, it created our name and set it to Kyle. And this time it is just updating our name and setting it to Sally. Same exact thing for session storage. If I were to just copy this, paste it down here, change the age to 35, and we save, you can see our age is 35 here. It's just updating that value. We can also remove items manually by just coming in here, say remove item, and all we do is pass it the key. So we're going to remove the age from session storage. And if we save, the age is now gone from our session storage. Same thing over here. We can remove an item from local storage, just give it the actual key. And now if we go to our local storage, that name is no longer in there. The final thing we can do is actually get a value. So if we just come in here and we just say console.log local storage.get item of name, and we save, We go to our console, you can see it prints out Kyle, because inside of our application, inside of local storage, we have a key name and the value is Kyle, so we're getting that value of Kyle. We do the same thing with session storage. We want to get age, and you can see that prints out 25. Now, as I mentioned, cookies are a lot more difficult than this. So let's just get started and look at how we would use a cookie. Cookies are actually available on the document and not on the window. So you have to say document.cookie. This is going to be all of your cookies. And in order to create a cookie, we just need to set this cookie variable equal to a key value pair. So we say name, which is our key, put the equal sign, and then we put our value, which is Kyle. If we save this and go back to that application tab, and we go down into cookies, you can see that this is a much larger section. So let's expand this out. You can see we have name right here, which is our key of name, a value of Kyle, and then has a bunch of other information. Specifically, what we care about is our expiration. So we can look at that here in our expires section. And you can see our expires/match age is just for our session. And the reason for this is because we didn't actually supply our own expiration date. And sometimes a browser will actually default this to some past value, for example, some date that's already occurred. So it's going to be expired as soon as you create it. So in general, it's good to create an expiration for your cookies. So in order to create an expiration for our cookies, we need to do inside of here is put a semicolon and a space, and that'll tell us we're adding a new thing to our cookie. So here's our cookie name and value, and then we want to set the expiration. So we'll just say expires, set it equal to something, and in our case, we need to set it equal to a date. So we're just going to create a date up here, const date is equal to a new date. And in order to make something expire, we just specify the date we want it to expire. In our case, if we don't want it to ever expire, we just create a date far in the future. So if we just pass 9,999, that's going to be the year. And we can say 01. This is going to be year 9,999, January 1st. This is way in the future. It'll never ever expire because this year is not going to be hit. So then all we need to do is convert that to a UTC string. So we call the function .toUTC string on our new date. That'll convert our date to a string, which we can use inside of our cookie. So now if we use just some simple string interpolation, we put our date inside of here and save, you'll notice if we expand this out, our expiration is now year 999 or 9,999 on January 1st. So this is expiring way in the future. And in that point, essentially it means it'd never expire. But we could change this to a date that's, near in the future, maybe an hour from now, 2 hours from now, and then the cookie would only be good for an hour or two. So now what happens if we want to add a second cookie? Because right now we have our document.cookie, which is our name of Kyle. And we can even print this out by saying console.log document.cookie. This is how you get all of your cookies. If we go to our console, you see it says name equals Kyle. It just prints out the name value pair, in our case, name and Kyle. So what if we want to add a brand new cookie? Well, we can say document.cookie and just again, set it equal to something. This doesn't work like a normal variable. A normal variable would get overridden, but document cookie is special in that it'll just add whatever you set it to equal to the end of its current list of cookies. We can create a brand new cookie for age. We can set it to the string 25, and we can make our expires here equal to our date. There we go. And now if we save, you can see when we print out cookie, we have name equals Kyle and age equals 25. It prints out both of them. But it just prints them as a string. It's really difficult to parse this and use this as actual information. So generally, you're not going to be using cookies inside of the browser. And if we go to our application tab here, just expand this out again, you can see that we have age of 25, age 25, name Kyle, and they both expire in the year 9,999. Now, in order to delete a cookie is again really annoying because there's no method for deleting a cookie. To delete a cookie, you just need to reset that cookie but set it with a blank value and an expiration in the past. So we can just say document.cookie is equal to, and let's just copy this name one up here. We need to set it to a blank value. In our case, we don't pass a value to this name. And then our expiration is a date in the past. So let's just say past date. And instead, we're just going to set this to 1999. That is a date in the past. And we can put our past date in here. And now if we try to log our cookie, it should not contain that cookie. So we can save this, go to our console, and you can see we have name up here with Kyle. Down here, we don't have that name because we set it to a blank value and an expiration in the past, which deletes the cookie for us. And again, like I said, super confusing to use. This is why I pretty much always use local storage when I'm storing data, unless I need to send it to the server, in which case I'll use cookies, or I need it to delete itself automatically when I close the tab, in which case I'll use session storage. Otherwise, always use local storage because it's just so much easier and it works in so many scenarios. And that's everything there is to storage inside the browser. In the next video, we're going to take a look at making a more advanced to-do list application, similar to the simple list application we created earlier, but now we're going to take all of the more advanced skills we've learned recently and combine them together to make an even more powerful to-do list application, so I can't wait to see you in that video.